From e-scooters to flying taxis, the future of travel will no longer be just about the mode of transport, but solutions that are digital, smart and personal. Mobility is the keyword, and making it sustainable socially and environmentally is the challenge that all populations face amid limited resources and a global climate crisis. Innovation is needed, as well as global cooperation, to make all kinds of mobility cohesive and adaptive across towns, cities and even across borders. To seek this kind of partnership, the European Commission's Director General for Mobility and Transport, Henrik Hololei, is in Seoul to meet with local officials at the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. We have the honour of having him in our studio today to envision this future of mobility and how countries can move forward together. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. Hololei. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
And well, first, if I may, how was your journey here? How would you rate it as Transport Director General?
Well, I would say that it wasn't that bad because it was like in any other big city, and Seoul is definitely a big city. So, of course, it takes a bit of time if you come from the center out to the outskirts. And clearly, the amount of cars and the congestion, it's present, but I've seen much worse.
Right, well, hopefully next time we can really wow you with our transport system here. But, well, getting into the questions, really, you're here to speak with Seoul officials about cooperation between South Korea and the European Union on sustainable mobility. And now, when we hear the word sustainable, we normally think about environment-related issues or something government-related. But what does sustainable mobility really mean for the average person?
Well, first, it's great to be here in Seoul, and we had a rather historic day yesterday because with the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure, we kicked off the first ever EU-South Korea transport dialogue, and we hope that this framework and this format will give us an ample opportunity to deepen our cooperation, widen our cooperation, and find many interesting topics to cooperate on. Sustainability, of course, is something that everybody wants to be associated today, because in the end of the day, we all want to live in a world which is greener, cleaner, where the air quality is better. And of course, in order to achieve that, we have to opt for more sustainable solutions. What does it mean? I mean, it can mean, of course, many things, but it also means about being able to understand yourself what kind of environmental footprint do you leave behind when you are jumping on a bus or taking a car or whatever. So being more conscious, I think that's one thing. And also, while being more conscious, you can make more sustainable choices. The other thing is that the transport and mobility sector has been growing very fast. The demand is very strong. And that is also the reason why, for example, the emissions in that sector are not very easily going down. So we also need to find new ways. We need to boost innovation. We need to find new ways how transport is powered in order to make it more greener. In Europe, we have the European Green Deal. And that means that Europe wants to be a carbon neutral continent by 2050. As far as I understand, Korea also wants to be carbon neutral by 2050. For us, it means, of course, that emissions in the transport sector, they need to go down 90%. And that's a very, very big challenge. In our case, also, the transport sector is responsible for about 1/4 of all the emissions. In Korea, it's about 15%. But the challenge is still the same, and the solutions are also pretty much similar. More innovation, more kind of transport which leaves a smaller environmental footprint, and of course, reinventing the way how transport is powered.
I see, and well, we live in a time of crises, really. All over the world, we're seeing crises in multifarious forms. And amid all these challenges, what kind of opportunities and challenges do you see for both South Korea and Europe?
When I look back for the last decade or more, actually, I think we have been living all the time in the crisis, at least in Europe. There's been one crisis coming after another. The financial crisis, economic crisis, migration crisis, security crisis, of course, COVID pandemic, and now the murderous Russian aggression towards Ukraine. There's been a lot of crises we have been trying to go through, but at the same time, we are also living in the societies which are changing. And like with every crisis, and you know, as they say, never waste a good crisis. We should also use them in order to make more radical changes.
Right, and that actually leads to my next question. I mean, we're hearing about all these solutions that are to come in the future, such as air taxis and 5G cars that pick you up at your door. And well, how has the concept of transport really changed? And as Director General of Mobility and Transport, how do you envision the future of mobility?
Well, I mean, it is changing. It is changing as we speak. One of the problems is that sometimes the authorities are not flexible, are not open enough for new solutions, and try to hide behind the fact that the regulatory framework does not allow this or that. I think that's a very wrong attitude. I think that we need to find a way, at least, how to test and trial, and then also create the necessary regulatory framework, having, of course, in mind that everything that you do is safe and secure. But I do believe that we are going to see certainly some more personal mobility than in the past. I think COVID has also left some trace, at least in our minds, and people are opting more personal solutions than perhaps public solutions. At the same time, we also want people to be back in the public transport because we want them to leave their car behind. And by that also trying to limit the congestion, by that also trying to limit the environmental footprint. So there are many challenges in that respect. And I think that, you know, when you look at the cities and take Seoul, for example, what you really want is you want to have a smooth ride. Yeah, you don't want to spend your time in the traffic jams and be in the congested environment. But you wouldn't be able to change that if you would not be using more efficiently the digital solutions, which would also help to manage the flow better and make sure that the journeys become more pleasurable. And also, we will be talking very much about the journey in the future, because in the end of the day, the person, they don't care how to get from point A to point B where they want to come, or which transport mode they take. They want, you know, artificial intelligence perhaps to decide upon them what will be the most optimal route and what kind of different transport modes are you going to bind together. But for that, it also means that you have to have a multimodal ticketing system. You have to have the different transport modes and different service providers working together in order to make that happen. So I think these are going to be the big changes. And indeed, you will probably get your pizza very soon delivered by a drone. And it's not too far when you jump in a innovative air mobility vehicle and avoid the long run from Incheon Airport to the city and rather take air taxi or whatever kind of name or form it has.
So Europe's very well known for its innovation, as well as South Korea. And in that regard, which areas do you see the biggest potential for collaboration?
Well, actually, the list is very long, and but if we focus again more on the innovation and more of the innovative side, then yes, I mean what we talked about, the innovative air mobility has a huge potential. In Europe, we have been focusing last years a lot in order to create the regulatory framework for safety, in order to create the use space, which we call the low altitude airspace, where the drones and the innovative air mobility vehicles will be operating. And we are today by far the most sophisticated regulatory framework in the world. And we are more than happy to continue to talk with our Korean partners also to share our experiences, but also at the same time benefit from many of the interesting solutions which are being rolled out here. The same is, of course, about the intelligent transport systems. I mean, how to make your vehicles more sophisticated, how to make them also at the same time safer. And there are so many new features which are being rolled out. I also had the pleasure to visit the K-City, where you have a very, very good test bed, where, you know, which is open also for those who want to test new solutions. And I think that there are many things we can learn from you, and also many things where we can put our best experts together in order to get the best solutions that will serve very well the Korean and European people.
And of course, we're seeing very exciting new mobility solutions arising out of Europe as well. But how do you intend to make these new exciting mobility solutions available, accessible and affordable for people, a population as diverse as the European Union? I mean, across all the different countries, and especially reaching all passengers, particularly those with reduced mobility.
I think that you made a very good point. I mean, because all these services, they sound very exciting, but in the end of the day, of course, they have to be safe first and foremost. But they also have to be affordable, because we are here not talking about trying to put in the market some niche products which are only available for few, but we want something where the population will benefit from. So definitely affordability is something that the companies also need to look into. One thing is that in order, if you want to make things affordable, you also need to make sure that there is competition, that there are no sort of lock-ins, that there are no sort of proprietary systems. They have to be interoperable. They have to be, open to the competitors, and you have to create a market where there is the predictability and where there is also an interest for the different companies to enter. I believe in the power of competition. I believe also in the power of the private sector and the developers being able to come with good products, but we need to make sure that they will be competing in an environment which is conducive and which also actually is attractive for them.
Very good. And well, moving beyond land-based mobility, though, the aviation industry all around the world was still reeling from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And well, we want to hear what kind of trends or changes you see lasting beyond this pandemic.
The effects of the pandemic actually have been much smaller than anticipated. Of course, in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a big fear how it's going to affect aviation. Maybe, people having the video conferences or staying at home, maybe they don't want to travel. That's not been the case. I mean, the demand this summer, when it opened up, at least in Europe and North America, the demand has been enormous. The demand has been bigger than we have in the past. And we are very close to the pre-pandemic numbers. One of the reasons why we are not in close to pre-pandemic numbers or past pre-pandemic numbers in Europe is because there has been, because of COVID, the closures in Asia. I mean, China is still closed, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan is pretty much closed. Korea has just sort of opened up. And of course, that has been a reason why, because there haven't been flights. And you have the same in Korea. I mean, you have about 50% of the flights what it was before COVID. So now when things are opening up, I see that the strong demand will continue to power the aviation sector. But one of the big buts, of course, is again that in order for aviation to grow, the license to grow is that aviation should become more sustainable. And this is an imperative. It's not easy to be achieved because there is no one single solution or a magic wand that is going to take you to a much more sustainable aviation. But we need to put the framework in place. We need to make sure that in the next years, in the next decades, there is a very clear pathway so that by 2050, aviation will be carbon neutral. The single most important contributor to that is sustainable aviation fuels. And there are different types of them. There are drop-in biofuels, there are so-called e-fuels, synthetic fuels, and hydrogen, where Korea is, of course, the world leader when it comes to the deployment of hydrogen in mobility and transport solutions, and in the future also, hopefully, in aviation. And they are leading the way, definitely, in that category. But the main thing is really aviation must become more sustainable because people are also more conscious. We started talking about what sustainability means. It means also that the traveling public, the customer wants to make a sustainable choice, and it needs to know that aviation is contributing to that. On top of it, one of the reasons why I'm here also, and in the context of the transport dialogue and with my colleagues in the ministry, we talked about the perspective of comprehensive air transport agreement between Korea and European Union. This would not be just about market opening. This would be building a comprehensive aviation partnership, which is going to be lasting for decades, working together in safety matters, security matters, air traffic management modernization, environment matters, social matters. And we are very keen to see Korea as one of our partners.
Right, and this trip is really building the foundation for that. And while you're here, we don't want to leave out the maritime industry as well.
Definitely not.
So amid this global shift to LNG-powered ships, do you see more opportunities for South Korean and European firms?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, South Korea is a world leader when it comes to shipbuilding, and of course, it has a very strong industry, and it also produces very high-quality products. So clearly, we are keen to continue to cooperate with South Korea in this matter. The other thing is, like we talked about aviation, we talked about the land transport. The same applies to maritime. It has to become more sustainable, and again, there are no easy solutions, and new type of ships propelled with new sort of solutions it will take time because ships are also assets which are used for a long time. It don't change them overnight, and they're also expensive assets. So yes, LNG is definitely one of those solutions, but let's also not forget that LNG is a fossil fuel, so in a way it is a transitory fuel. Sustainable biofuels for maritime transport, yes, one of the solutions. Hydrogen is also potentially one of the solutions. Ammonia is talked about. So there are many different solutions also which are still now in the marketplace, and we will see the market will have to choose what kind of ways of powering maritime transport will be the most optimal in 10-20 years. But the LNG ships today, I think they make a difference, and clearly we are keen to cooperate with Korea, and of course the European companies are doing that, and there is a close cooperation in that sense. And many of the users of these ships are also in Europe. So yes, I think that there are interesting and exciting ways how to move that forward, and I'm still to have my discussions with your maritime administration, so I'm looking forward to good talk with them. And Korea, of course, when we talk about maritime, Korea is well known because the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, Ki-tak Lim, comes from Korea. He's a good friend, and we always have very good discussions. I think you should be very proud of having him as a Secretary General for the World Maritime.
Right, and we certainly appreciate your efforts over the years to make transport greener, more sustainable and inclusive as well. And it's been an honour to have you in our studio today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you.